Welcome to Ghana Promise. We express economics, global health, science, and social thoughts. We comment on issues that affect the life of the ordinary person. We are apolitical and non-partisan. We say what we see fit in the best light we see fit. It may seem to you we are taking sides. No. We don't have that as our goal. And now, we welcome the host, Dr. Gadja, spelled capital G, E, T, capital J, A, H. This is Dr. Gadja, an economist, computer scientist, medical doctor, and global health PhD epidemiologist. I do this as a calling to help Ghana chart a course for greatness and, in the process, help Africa along the way. There are many issues we'll be discussing on this platform, and we welcome your comments, rebukes, and questions. Today's topic: our focus today is on the Akufo speech that was given, I think, on the 27th or the 28th, I'm not too sure about the date, of the previous month, which is October 2022. And my concern was, he said about all the right things in terms of trying to allay fears of people in the economy. He said almost the right things. However, the things he said wouldn't bring the solution. If you want to look at it in terms of being able to change perception, which is what you want to do in every economic situation, because it is perception that drives economic decisions. So perception is very key. And when you have any situation in an economy, you have to think about the perception of the players in the economy. So in trying to achieve that, I would say he did somewhat. However, that is not going to change the situation immediately. My concern really is that Ghana is getting a little too hot. People are getting apoplectic. They don't know what to do. And there is a need to dial down a little bit. Very, very significant. If you look at the situation that Ghana finds itself in, it's reminiscent of the late 70s and 80s, where we had coups and all those economic disturbing situations. But I believe, and I should hope, that Ghanaians have learned that economic destabilization processes like coups are not solutions to economic problems. Between the NDC and MPP that have run our Fourth Republic government for this time that we have been in the Fourth Republic, have put their best people forward. And to some, that is the best of Ghana. And yet, we've not been able to solve the problems. So, if the best have not been able to solve the problem, bringing a military man who has not been schooled in that area, he might be a good soldier, a good marksman, because that's what he knows how to do best, to come and be at the top of a government and an economy that needs people who have been schooled in that area to be able to offer some solution, who at the moment are not being able to adequately save the situation. It's a situation that will be going worse. So a coup or an overthrow or the kind of things that we hear in the media is not the solution. It will send us back several years, as we all recognized those periods in our past had done to the country. However, the question still remains, how do we solve our problem? Now listen to the president. Some of the issues he raised were very true. He talked about Ghana is in a crisis situation, which I very much agree with. He has recognized that we are in a crisis situation. What was lacking was the provision of solutions that will stall the crisis. Then he gave plans that looked a little too far in the distance. As a medical doctor, when you recognize an emergency, you don't leave it till you stop the bleeding. You don't leave the emergency till you stabilize the situation. I expect the president, or I want to suggest to the president, this is not a time that he has to take leave. He has to be coming every time to the people. I will suggest, if possible, every day in the evening. Get on the media, the national TV or whatever, to deliver to the people some information so they also know that you are in cahoots. You are with them in the struggle. Like I said, perception is the main thing. If they know you are with them, at least you can be able to stabilize the perception that they have about a situation getting worse, to make them think you are in control and so it is going to get better. So I would suggest that he comes. In fact, this situation is bigger than COVID. COVID just kills. You go and rest. This is, you are living and you're not dying and you can't live. It's worse. You have people who have the strength but cannot seem to be able to do anything to help themselves to get the next meal or to get the next whatever. So there's so much confusion. So I suggest that he comes more often to the national TV or media and let the people have some assurance. I have been hearing a lot on social media, people condemning him, condemning Ghana and all that. I mean, this is not a time to do that. We are in the same boat. Doing that is not going to help anything. It's just going to make the situation worse. Like he said, we should not talk down the economy or talk down Ghana. Yes, if you talk down the economy or talk down Ghana, anybody who has some money in cities will just go and buy foreign currency, because the perception is, oh, everybody's saying Ghana is going to suffer. So why don't I drop my cities and buy dollar? That in itself increases the price of dollar, and the exchange rate begins to work against us, making our imports very expensive. And you realize the sellers in Ghana, traders or merchants, always pass on the buck to the consumer, which is something we have to look at differently some other time, because those things go around and all of us suffer. Just as inflation, all of us suffer. Any price increases that goes round, the whole economy suffers equally. But those making the decisions at the time don't think about it in that way, because they might not be economic minds and stuff like that. So he had said some of the things that he needs to say. That is, the government is trying to do things. When the IMF comes in, it's a good thing. Last I was listening to the former President Mahama, he was also said he has suggested that they go to IMF, which was something long overdue. Because if you look at it, the right things are not being done correctly. Now, when Mahama also spoke 3 weeks ago on Voice of America, The kind of solutions that he was talking is the same as the president has been saying. So you realize the problem is not a party problem. It is not NDC problem, neither is it MPP problem. The problem is a Ghana problem. And I have rightly thought so from the beginning. I remember when Akufo was in power, I had wished that he did exactly what it is, which is the redenomination of the city, which he pulled it back, and that looked like help. But in the Ghanaian psyche, figures mean something. So when it is 2, the Ghanaian think is small, regardless of whatever the value is. When it's in the 1,000, the Ghanaian thinks is adequate. So we have to change our mind on that perspective. These things will be for some other time. But just let's look at just the speech the president gave. He said he spoke about traders and the rest of merchants, and he said he respected them and all that. And he talked about the arbitrary raises in prices, which is something Ghana has to look at. In like the West, especially in America, for instance, we have consumer protection agencies. It's something that Ghana has to look into correctly and set up parameters for which prices can be going up. Just as in their parliament, in Ghana's parliament, you don't just pass a bill. The bill has to go through a process of maturity before it becomes law. The same process has to be there for price increases, especially for critical goods and services. You just don't get up and increase price. You realize that in Ghana, most of these traders are in cliques. Basically, they are in organizations. That is a monopoly. They are using monopoly power, and antitrust laws have to come against such activities. If we don't recognize that, they don't know. They think they increase price so to be able to manage their activities. Yes, those who buy from them also increase their price, and then the other guys who also increase their price, and eventually they who started the increase in the price also begin to pay higher prices. So nobody gains. But they are not at the level of being able to understand these economic effects or trends. So it is the government that has to set parameters. Let me suggest one. For instance, you have a parameter that says that before you increase a price of a commodity or any product, you should not be able to increase it more than 0.5% of the cedi in a month. So if that is all you can increase in a month, you have to understand that it will take long before you be able to increase that product about a cedi. So those things are parameters that the government can put in place to be able to reduce arbitrary price increases. When you are in difficulty in an emergency, like I had just said, you have to constantly be monitoring the situation and be adjusting the remedies. If you don't do that, the patient will die. As in the case of Ghana, we have to, the government has to be churning out policies, looking at the situation, changing them, reversing them. That is how pragmatically you can work in fixing an economy like Ghana, which is gone off the road or off the rails. There are some that have said things that I don't know the truth about. That the government is arming, the government is doing other things, they've stolen money and all. But all that wouldn't help anything. The president said he was going to reduce salaries and emoluments and all that. That's good. It's political, just to show that they also are concerned. But that is not what will change the situation. One thing that I realized in the economics is that when things get difficult, most people will suggest austere measures, which means cut back. And usually that's what the IMF will tell you also. Obviously, if your expenditure is more than your revenue, all you have to do to survive is to cut back. But I don't subscribe to that situation, and even my own life, I don't do that. Because I realize when you cut back, what happens? You get smaller. So for an economy that is trying to grow, cutting back might not be the solution. Maybe finding better ways of borrowing or financing their infrastructure or their projects, and make sure the projects are projects that will bring returns in the future to be able to pay the debts, so that instead of becoming small, instead of squeezing in the difficulty, you are expanding. And that has been an approach that I've used for myself. So you see that instead of squeezing and becoming small in a difficult situation, you expand. At the end of it, you have created infrastructure and investment opportunities that will be able to pay the loans that you took and be able to leave you some for further growth. That is the measure I suggest. In not too long, when the global economy was suffering from squeeze, just before the COVID-19, most economies in Europe, pretty much the European Union and even Britain, decided to implement austerity or austere measures. The US did not. They continued to pump money into the economy. I mean, at the end of it, when they came to the balance of that year, the US economy had grown. The others had shrunk. That is the kind of thing I'm talking about. Another issue he spoke about was that the traders should no, let me leave that and let me go here. He talked about taxes. We are not paying enough taxes. It still goes to some of the austere measures. The people are suffering. The money they have is not enough for them. And you talk about more taxes, that is not going to solve it. You said they are not producing enough. Yes, there's no work. There's no work. So they can't produce enough when they don't have the ability to be able to do so. He rightly said we have to focus on education. Yes, that is something Ghana has to focus on. In actual fact, more people have been educated in Ghana, but they have been educated on the wrong things. I've seen it with my eyes, and I realize that for a developing economy like Ghana, we need more education in the sciences, the technology, the what do you call it, electronics, and the math. Basically, more science bias is what we have to take. But you see, increasingly, theology institutions becoming more, the arts becoming more, and very few scientists have been produced in Ghana. That is not education for the purposes of Ghana at all. Maybe medieval Rome might have that for exercise and increase the theaters. But for Ghana, that is it's like we are wasting the resources because we are training the wrong we are training for the wrong professions. We have to find a way to change the education system, and I'm a big factor of that, because you see people doing arts and those things and not be able to do science. Government has to be able to put more people in doing science. People leave Ghana shores as maybe somebody who has done art and go to the Americas and become a scientist, maybe even a doctor, maybe even a neurologist or a neuroscientist. But in Ghana, all the way to university, maybe never did science at all. So what is happening? That tells you that in some cultures and in some countries, they're able to use that which you will not find as good enough to do some great things. And that is a problem that Ghana has to look at. The president also talked about debt to GDP ratio. Now that's okay. Debt to GDP ratio, GDP just tells you how you are going forward. So that should not be too much of a factor. When you have a problem like an emergency, as he admits, you have to be hands-on, looking at the problem directly. He talked about 3 to 6 years as something to solve the problem. No, people want solutions right now, President. Right now. 3 to 6 years, everybody will be, it's too long. It's too long. He also mentioned that they want to increase value on imports. These are things that had been mentioned as solutions more than 30 years ago when I was still in college in Ghana. And you don't know how do you do that? How do you increase your value of imports? The value added. I mean, you can do that, but it's a very difficult proposition because you are not the one using the products you produce. When you talk about value added of exports, is what I'm talking about. You are not the one going to use the exports. So if you're talking about value added, you have to think about what the buyer or what the one buying the product needs. So it's been churned out several times. It's not working anymore. We have to think differently. And then we have to discourage imports and patronize our homemade products. Point is that homemade products are not good enough. If you discourage imports, the homemade producer is not able to see what the competition is, so they are not able to improve. So discouraging imports is not a thing. Moreover, when you put tariffs, high tariffs on imports, the people in the country suffer because somebody will definitely need a product and a merchant has to bring it in. And if the merchant is bringing the product in and he has to pay high prices, the people are the ones that eventually get to suffer the high prices that the tariffs have put on the products. So discouraging imports to a large extent is not the right thing. I mean, the policies Ghana has been churning out is the same policies they've been churning out since their life. I mean, after Nkrumah, it's been this same thing. Nkrumah started it. At that time, I think was a better time because it was trying to push in industrialization, force ahead, and they go outside and go and look for the best products and bring it in and do. That is fine. But after Nkrumah, those policies have to run down. Like tariffs and those is no. Try to make competition possible. Rather, government should find a ways to subsidize their local manufacturers to be able to compete with the outside product until the outside product cannot compete anymore. And then you have gained an industry where competence and efficiency is the hallmark. Talks about banking directives whereby basically the mining companies and oil companies have to have payments made into accounts in Ghana first and all that. My friend, this is not something you can monitor. So let's not throw it out there. We can monitor it. If I'm selling a product to somebody in Beijing, maybe I don't even have a seller whilst I ship the product out. If the guy can transfer funds to me and pay me in Chinese yuan, now you want me to say, hey, don't pay me here. Take the money to Ghana. Even when you try to transfer money from the US to Ghana, it's difficult. So come to think about transfer it from one to Ghana, China to Ghana. Becomes more difficult. The manufacturer or the seller, as in this case, wants the money. Why should he present a more difficult process for the guy sending him the money? So this is a process that we can monitor. It's not going to work. He also spoke about the banks. I mean, the banks say now when you have a dollar account and you want to withdraw, they're going to pay you in cedis. What does that bring? People don't put their money in the banks anymore. They'll keep their dollars and not put in the bank. So there will be a shortfall in dollars or foreign exchange as a matter of fact when you put a policy like that forward. Suspension of forest bureaus. That only pushes the forest bureau into a black market. It's not going to change anything. Instead of such strategies, these are the same strategies that were used in the 70s and the 80s. Instead of such strategies that are kind of like dropping the hammer on people, don't do that. Find a way to give them time to pay for violations. When you take the license off, that forest bureau has staff members that become unemployed. So you are aggravating the situation. The forest bureau doesn't do anything. He takes all his money and goes to black market. Now you don't see anything. You don't get any revenue from them. They don't pay any taxes. You've made a situation that is bad worse. US dollar liquidity. Yes, just as personal credit ratings, governments are also rated. To have liquidity in the dollar is to find ways to make yourself credit worthy. If Ghana is rated as high on the credit ratings of FITS and these credit agencies, they will definitely give Ghana the opportunity to be able to borrow as many or as much foreign currency as they want, because the belief is that they're going to pay back. But when our credit rating is so low, nobody wants to give you the money you need in foreign exchange because of fear you may not pay back. And has Ghana done that before? Yes. So the liquidity problem is something we have to look at, and that is an area that Ghana has complete control. We don't understand, and so we talk about buying gold. We don't even know what we are doing, it seems like, because they talk about, so we want to increase our gold foreign exchange reserve. I mean, what is that? And this have been said by people who are supposed to know better, who did economics. And then also, so we have to look at how to increase forex liquidity, or basically for us to improve our ratings. The banking directives that we should not give dollar out, that one I had already said it. It's not a good one. The Ghana government will continue to purchase gold. Yes, we don't understand that. We just say it out because probably somebody told us that. There should be a better way to manage this. Then it talks about international best practices should be followed. Now, every country, to a large extent, must create for themselves policies and best practices that solve their problem. One thing I've seen in Ghana is that we go and copy something that somebody's doing without understanding why they are doing it. And we bring it whole, hook, line, and sinker, and come and try to implement it in Ghana. Unfortunately, we are not having the same problems that people were having. And so implementing those policies don't work. They only bring hardship and at times non-coordination. One thing that is going well for Ghana is that the perception of the outside world about Ghana is very high. It's very good. And Ghana has to find a way to justify the reality on the ground in Ghana with the perceptions of the world. Because it may not be long, or these things cannot carry on forever. Eventually, reality will set in for the rest of the world, and the perception will be lost. And that is not something that Ghana wants to get into. So the country has to sit up. We cannot be importing solutions. If we even import solutions, we have to look at it and address it to our situation, like a doctor will do for a patient. You don't say that the patient is having headache, and so because of that, you are going to give a particular medication because it worked for the other guy. You have to look at the patient, examine the patient, and prescribe for the patient the medication that the patient needs. That is what Ghana has to do. Ghana has to find a way of thinkers, to put together thinkers, people who can think for the nation, to prescribe Ghana's own solutions for the problems of Ghana. The continuance of important solutions that don't equal the problems we have will not take us far. Both Mahama and Akufo Addo, basically the president, have said the same things as to how to solve the problems. But the same things has been the same things that we've been trying all these years, and it's not been solving the problem. So we have to begin to look at things a little differently. And that will have to start pretty soon, because the currents against Ghana are strong, such that we have to sit up and not plunge our economy or our country into chaos. Those of you on the social media networks spouting hate, confusion, coup, all those things. Please, 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 let's tone it down. This is not a time for that. That is not going to bring us anything. Let's tone it down. Let's think about what will be the effects of those things. You even talking, we don't know what will happen. Can you think about Liberia? Look at how back Liberia had gone as a result of that civil war. Can you think about Sierra Leone? It doesn't help anything. So let's not be saying those things. The things we say about our country, if we say it, might probably happen. I remember I listened to one guy who says that your words make your world. So if the words you are saying are bad words, you are probably going to have a bad world for yourself. So let's stop it. None of us wants those things because you don't know what it will come. You'll probably be the first one to go down when it happens. So let's not spout those things. Let's understand that this is a Ghana problem. It's not an MPP problem, neither is it an NDC problem. It's a Ghana problem. And Ghanaians have to find a solution to solve it. Some of us are willing to help the best we can. We'll be spouting these things, we'll be giving suggestions. Governments that want to listen may take it, but it's not that we are taking side with any government. We are just saying it as we see fit. That is the problem that we have. The old solutions that we've taught in the universities, we define money as goods and as currency and bonds and securities. Today, we know that is wrong. Money is even commodities. Money is gold. Money is oil. Money is corn. Money is peanuts. Everything that you can exchange for any good and service is money. Today we are exchanging bauxite for bridges with China. The only problem with that is that we didn't negotiate the thin wall. We negotiated our oil, we didn't negotiate it well. Whether it's because people have negotiated for themselves instead of the country, I don't know that. But those we send for negotiations for the country are not helping the country. We negotiate bad deals. And that is affecting us. We are producing oil, we are not a producing country, but the price of oil are higher than at any point in time in our history. What are we doing? We go and buy things to produce electricity and we leave them to rot. We seize cars from people and we put them down to rot. It's like we are not ready to solve our problems. And that is what we have to look at. Think about the waste. Cut the waste. Not what is doing it. Austere measures is not to cut what is good, but to cut what is wasteful. Cut the waste. Focus on that thing that can make you grow big. So that in the future, you will look back and you realize that the problems that beset you had even pushed you forward. So that you'll be able to meet the demands of the future. It is factual that the whole world is going forward. The problems of the future are definitely going to be more than the problems right now. So if you do austere measures and you cut down on the good things, you're becoming small. You'll not be able to meet the problems of the future. As you saw, even giants like the United Kingdom going to the IMF to help their economic standing. Now, as we go to the IMF, we have to recognize that it's not going to be forever. So we have to do the things that we need to do fast. And there's a lot that Ghana can do. In fact, there's a lot going for Ghana. There's so much going for Ghana that when I sit and I see people talking down Ghana, I get sick. There's a lot going for Ghana. The problem is that we are not doing the right things. There's a lot. There's so much promise for Ghana. And in fact, the whole of Africa. There's so much promise that the rest of the world see it and they're like, wow. The only problem is that the African, the Ghanaian, is not seeing it. There's so much promise. So much promise. And we have to seize the moment. That's it.